sure that works, boys and girls. See a green start to this stream. Let's see if the stream quality is decent. Make sure we're good on the microphones. We redid everything in here, so I don't know if you guys can hear me. Hopefully you can. This was like a swap around and then good to go. I'll get the microphone checked from you guys. Let's make sure it's good and we'll get into this. We got a lot to cover. Uncle BBT. So let me know if you guys can hear me. What's up, Barry? 2-ton Asher. Welcome, guys. Looks good, sounds good. Excellent. So as you can tell, we pivoted everything around a little bit. We're on the back wall where the panel was. Have the whiteboard behind me. That's going to be kind of the standard decor per se. I think I'm going to do maybe a green screen or something if we want to have something more specific, later in the future. But I thought since sometimes when I'm trying to explain things, especially in a live stream, I'm kind of a whiteboard person as it goes anyways, or a chalkboard or anything that I can go and explain and articulate what I'm trying to tell you guys more clear. And what better to improve my ability to communicate with you guys by showing you guys like picture examples and kind of that kind of depiction. So the last few days have been very interesting, especially with the pullback in the market, and I've been thinking about how to approach maybe some conversation versus the random TA kind of technical analysis on the currency and what's going on, and I'm going to still bridge it back on the technology. We're going to go through some of the things that I think are some key indicators, which you guys probably already know, that are putting some of the downward pressure, and then again the onslaught of various media coverage that is not helping the space in any capacity, but they're not required to help the space, and I want to make sure that that's understood. Like, media is there to report, media is there to do some investigative journalism maybe, and then they're there to create content on a 24-hour news cycle. So you're going to see a lot of different content, and the way I had set this up tonight when we start going through some of the main key indicators, I think, of why the market's pulled back some. I've done just base level Google searches, and I leave it at that. And I'm going to explain kind of why I go through that, because you look at the different tonal exercises from the different media companies, because some have vested interest, some don't have vested interest, some don't care, some are trying it from a technical perspective, and you get all these different, rationales of why a market will pull back. So I wanted to, articulate kind of that and kind of go through a couple of the big key headers of why I personally think, again, none of this obviously is always financial advice. It's my depiction of understanding it from my kind of lens. And I don't want to just say mine. It's a lot of collaborative discussion here locally with the folks that I interact with, too, of just trying to understand and see where things are going, kind of from a market standpoint. But I center around a lot of the technology side. So we'll pull that into the technology. So we'll start with the first kind of three subjects: SEC regulation, the Mt. Gox trustee cells, and then the Google ad ban. Kind of as a whole, I'll switch over to the screen and we'll go through those each individually, and why and what does it really mean from my depiction. We'll talk briefly on the Bitmain X3 and the kind of situation that's going around the X3 and Monero forking because of it. And we'll talk through that and what does that mean, and especially for like new audience folks. I mean, if anybody was watching us last night on our kind of watching the Twitter feed, I was watching Ninja play Drake with Fortnite, and I went ahead and made a pretty large donation out there to that, really to get that name recognition out there. Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general needs some kind of marketing right now. So why not take an opportunity where there's 670,000 people watching, one of the pulp culture media's kind of prominent moments, at least from a Twitch streaming standpoint, and take the opportunity to throw our name up there. So if you guys were watching that last night, you probably saw Bitsby Trippin's name up there. We were the #1 donor out there to try to get some awareness on it. That kind of leads into some of the ad and some of the different pivot points that if like Google ads go away, there's other ways to kind of market in general. But and then we'll go through some difficult analysis. So what I mean by that is like we're going to take a look at a lot of the major currencies today and where the difficulty sets. What is the curves? What does this mean? Is like, can we see a natural heavy increase in difficulty on like Monero, and is that the indicator showing that the Monero miners, the ASIC miners from the various companies, what we call it, Budokai or whatever, Bokai, I can't pronounce that name for that company, and then the Bitmain version, there's a good chance that they had test models already on there. Are those on the network? Are they sitting there running up the difficulty? When the Monero forks, are we going to see a huge decrease? And then we can start to correlate. There's a lot of ASIC miners out there. I think those are huge indicators to see, how early on are these things baked in. These are competitive companies, and I would never put on Bitmain, regardless of any kind of opinions that anybody have of Bitmain or any other company. I would never ask them to disclose their books if they're a private company from a competitive advantage side. It just does. If you take all the emotion out of it and you step back and you look at it from just a pure business model, if they're doing engineering to go and try to tackle a currency, I don't fault them at all. They're a business. They're trying to make money. So the real key indicator though is, are they slow rolling the ASIC onto the network and sitting there mining for 5 months before they sell the piece of equipment? Nobody knows. So a hard fork will really indicate what's the real hash power. Again, you can still speculate it, because you can say, well, not everybody, some people stayed on the original coin with their GPUs, but if you see a pretty significant drop, then we can pretty much guarantee that there's some level of assurance, a high probability that there's probably already ASICs on Crypto Night and they've been out there for a while. So, and this sets the tone moving forward. I'm kind of jumping into the category of the Monero response in general, but this kind of sets the tone forward that if a company's going to invest in the currency, they got to also make sure that the community is supporting it in some capacity. I mean, you just can't show up one day and say, hey, this race is all for Miatas, and I'm going to show up in a Lamborghini today, and we're going to race together because this should be an open race. Why not, right? So I mean, it is an open source thing. They can do whatever they want, but if the community responds accordingly and pivots and forks the currency, there's a lot of, and if that was the main currency they were targeting, it puts a lot of risk on the company building more stuff. Thank you for the donation, sir. Nothing 88 TM. So I want to cover kind of some analysis on that. I want to look at the current currencies right now. We're going to look at Z Classic, we'll look at ZC, we'll look at Raven, we'll look at Ethereum, we'll look at all of them, we'll see their pull up, and we'll kind of do some basic analysis. Is with the pullback causing some people to turn off their miners? What happens in this occurrence when there's a pullback long enough that it's not very profitable mining? We've been through this a few cycles, and I want to go through kind of what I've had to do before in the space in general. We had this in 2013 into 2014 when there was a pretty heavy decrease of GPU mining and what happened during that period of time. So we'll cover some of that during that. We'll do some basic price analysis with regards to if you choose to continue to mine even at a loss, is it really a loss? And what I'm going to go through and explain and articulate is that there is a forecast that if you are looking at more of the long distance run here, that you may have some struggle in the middle here where you're going to go negative for a little bit when you're mining. But what does that, is the cost benefit versus the difficulty versus your hash power worth it? Meaning, like, if you continue to sit there and run at a loss, how deep of a loss are you getting? What is the break even to get you back up? Meaning, what does the price have to go to later on to at least pull you out of that piece? So we'll run through this. We'll do the math in the background here and to just explain, okay, now you can have some forecasting in your head to do some, you know, spitballing of like, I need to get it to here, or this price, here's my out, here's where I went down under for a little bit, and then here's the out where I needed to recover. You know, if you're running the operation to that, to where you're having to run month to month on your power and all that kind of stuff. So I want to give you guys some tools and some, at least some analytical approach to it of figuring out. Again, this is like any other analytical strategy, right? If you're mining and you're investing in mining and you're earning a currency and it has a price and then you're trying to sell it and it's not as much, there's a strategy to these things to figure out, you know, what's best for your particular situation. Like for our particular situation, I'm long time hold. Most of the currency, almost all the currency that I mine, I hold. And I work day job, I do work to make sure that I can pay for that kind of whole habit, essentially. Looking at the long term, when this stuff from the technology stuff that we'll cover in the last section comes to fruition and we start to see this entire web of blockchains, cryptocurrencies, private chains, public permissioned, all this ecosystem start to come together here in the future of, then you'll have transport mechanisms in place, you'll have platforms that are established, you'll have a lot of currency that's out there, and then you'll have a lot of natural growth that will happen with that kind of ecosystem. That's where my belief is, and that's why I'm long time hold. But I want to explain why I'm looking at it from that perspective, and it's not just a current situation. So let's get in. That was a kind of a long intro. We're at 11 minutes in, so we'll get into it right now. So the first piece I'm going to talk to is I'm going to talk to the pressure right now on the sell side. Where's all the pressure coming from? Why is all the media coming out saying for the like 18th time that Bitcoin's dying? And why is, you know, what is all the pressure coming from? So let's take a quick look at this. And Digital Gold, he'll lose more holding. Oh, there's a strategy of buying and selling too, buddy. I just choose to. I seem to always fell in that pretty hard if I try to sell and then rebuy, and it's just not so good. So let's switch this, pivot this to the other camera here, and go to where we'll talk. Essentially, first part, SEC regulation. So as we've switched this here now, very simply, regulation in general. This is really pertaining not just to the United States, but when you look at the Security and Exchange Committee and all the government organizations that help support the investigation activity and the financial sector and all that, and you start looking at their regulation, we knew that this was coming. We've been talking about this for 6 months. We actually, I think it was Gupta that responded to it after consensus last year, and he had a really good like 7-minute piece before Ethereum and everything was still at $300. And his whole point that he was making is that if people are not going to behave in the ICO space, the regulation's going to come. And yes, the government in general is slow roll when it comes into regulation. However, it will come in, and it will come in with a hammer when it comes to, you know, people that are trying to defraud stuff. So now we're seeing a narrative come from the main media, be it Forbes or anybody else. When you just Google a basic SEC regulation on cryptocurrency, and you're going to see narrative keys here where it's saying, hey, it's below 10,000, so obviously it's torpedoed it. You're going to see these things that pull you down of like, oh my God, is this the end of the world? This is creative language. And I mean, we know now, and sometimes it's called fake media or whatever, but they're saying, they're starting it with a fact of, yes, there's going to be some additional regulation, or they're going after particular things, but then they wrap it in a bad label. And then if you're out on the outside, you don't know if this is, you know, a good thing or a bad thing, right? I look at all the regulation in general, and I'm going to pivot the camera back here real quick, and we'll come back to this, because I want to make sure you guys understand my perspective of it. I look at the regulation in general. It's about perspective. If you're looking at what Bitcoin and this ecosystem and the space in general, from a libertarian standpoint, freeing it from government funds and all that kind of side of it, you don't want regulation. You don't want heavy-handed government into the space or any of that. What I heard tonal-wise from the government was at the SEC meeting a month ago is that they weren't trying to approach it that way. They were saying, if you're trying to be a dick and you're trying to defraud people, we're coming after you. We're also trying to figure out, are all ICOs, utility or not, are they all securities? And the basic answer so far has been yes. And not only that, they've actually reached their hands now into cloud mining and saying, hey, you're also selling a security. Now that one I'm kind of sketchy on, and I'd like to see some of the rationale on why a cloud contract. There could be some mechanical things that somebody like Mark Ostringe on Genesis Mining could probably do to probably segment that. If you were to rent hash power and it was linked specifically to the rigs that you were renting. So if you had 100 mega hash and you could serialize that 100 mega hash to a particular set of cards and stuff, I think it'd be kind of sketchy. It's more of a utility. You're getting a utility thing out of it. I think they could actually win that. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I think you could win that from a technical side. I would be a technical person that would be supporting a lawyer from an architecture standpoint to say, nah, that's bullshit, and you could link that. But right now, in the context that it is, you would have you're selling essentially this plan. So think of it like a managed service, and for that managed service, you're getting X amount. And some of the bylaws that are written in there, like if the cryptocurrency goes way non-profitable, they could end it. I think some of that language is what's getting them in trouble from an SEC standpoint, but that's just specifically cloud mining. ICOs in general, I think the Thanaros, if you haven't been paying attention to just the normal market in general, the Thanaros response and subsequent fine, the last paragraph on that actual presentation, I'm going to actually bring it up because I think it was very critical. Thanaros. CNBC did an article on it, and I think if you read between the lines, there is a paragraph in there that really explains where I think that if you're an ICO, you're going to be getting visited this statement here, which I think is kind of a good thing in a way. I mean, so this, where is it at? Let's see if I might have not went to the right article. We'll see here. It's the SEC's response on it. No, they've changed this article since then because it was right underneath here. But and that's the other part about the normal media. This is why this kind of shit needs to end up on a blockchain, because they keep editing it. So you get that narrative out on day one, and then you go and pivot and you change and update the article. Well, the piece that I was trying to reference wasn't anything negative. It was actually a direct quote from the SEC saying that if you sell an idea to somebody and then essentially internally you go, okay, we got the money, now let's go build that cool shit. Like, being honest, like, I'm going to try to go build that stuff. And then over a period of time, you discover that, like, oh shit, this isn't going to work. Like, we're either going to have to spend a lot more money and other research to see if this original idea that was going to work is going to work. And if you're still soliciting for more funds and you're still getting investors and you're hyping it up that, hey, we're getting there, but you had internal memos that you weren't there and you were probably never going to be there, that's when that pivot point goes from we're not going anywhere. And I think a lot of ICOs sell the dream and they're living the nightmare right now. And there's all kinds of reasons that they're having struggles. There's not enough blockchain engineers. People do not understand the complexities of what they're proposing. And when they really start to peel that back, they go, oh crap, this doesn't actually exist. And I'm actually going to have somebody write the code for this. And then you're in a competitive environment to try to pull those people there. So you look at the ICOs, you look at the SEC regulation on that, and I think you combine that, and the reality is that there's not enough development, there's not enough opportunity for people to try to materialize those big ICO things. So now you have investors that have a token that's not probably going to be worth anything because essentially the management side of it and all that starts to break down, right? So that's what they're going to start to discourage. So they're probably going to go after the ones that have knowingly defrauded people because they're gonna subpoena them. They're gonna check for emails. You get something called legal hold, which means like if you're a company and operating and then you didn't register with them, but you have offices here, they can pull that information. They can go and subpoena all your emails and all that kind of stuff, right? And then you're screwed. So I believe the regulation, if you're gonna operate in the old world, and I call it the old world, right? The normal structured world, if you're going to operate and facilitate funds from that world, you got to operate on those rules. Period. End of story. It's that simple, right? You don't get to have your cake and eat it too on that. If you want to disrupt and you want to make some inventive technology to where it becomes the platform, and then from that can generate revenue, and it's obfuscated, it gets complicated, right? They haven't even addressed, SEC government regulation has not tried to tackle that part because it is complex. It's the same thing of trying to tackle people from downloading MP3s in 2003. When the RIAA came after everybody, they started suing like grandmothers because their kids were downloading stuff. And they realized very quickly, like, shit, this wasn't the way to do this. Because one, the grandma that controlled the bank account, that paid for the internet service, it was just the wrong way to go out going about it. So they went and looked at it differently and said, well, you know, we'll do some digital media rights. Companies can license this technology. They can sell you an MP3 for $1 a pop. And now you have this whole ecosystem that was built out of it, and they changed the value proposition from us all growing up in the 90s and downloading music to going, you know what, not worth my time, there's viruses, there's bullshit, I gotta download some kind of crap, I'd much rather pay for that Drake song and pay 99 cents, right? So it's about allowing the technology to mature, incubating it, and letting it go. And trying to take on the people that are not just trying to give you value through some kind of dark web kind of thing. I'm not really attacking that piece. I'm attacking the piece that are like legitimately trying to part you from your money because they're being dicks, right? So that's the stuff that we look for. That's the stuff that the SEC in general is going for right now. And then I think that's good overall for the ecosystems. You can back that right into where the second part of this statement is with the Google Cloud, the Google ad ban. I don't know about you, but I'm tired of seeing every random ICO being advertised on every random website that I know is like, that's a total scam, right? I mean, think of how many BitConnect ads there were. Think of how many other ICOs are there. And it's not that if you took your approach because you have a cool idea and you ICO'd it and you spent a lot of money and now you feel like you're getting smacked in the backside because now there's not an opportunity for you. There's a different approach that you could look at, not just angel funding or go small with it. A lot of people try to tackle huge problems. I'm going to go and take on, reducing file sizes. We're going to, middle out. Anybody, it's a joke for people that watch Silicon Valley. Where you could just go look at it from one use case. Figure out one use case. If you're running an ICO, you're doing an ICO, tackle one use case on your dollar and prove out the functionality. Then solicit your funds, right? Get that main kind of first primer done. That's going to give a lot more people a lot more confidence, and you're going to be able to raise funds for that kind of stuff. And you're disrupting the world on it too. So again, the Google ad ban, if they came out and said not only we're banning ads, but we're also going to kill the AdWords and metadata and stuff like that, that would be a shit move, right? Because then that's direct censorship. And that's not what they're saying. They're saying that we're getting so much crap from ads that we're going to cut it. Now, the narrative that's going to come out from society in general, from the news agencies, is, oh my God, crypto's going to go down. Facebook and now Google. It's the end of the world. And it's like, oh man, it's like... think about it when you go to anywhere. You go to CoinMarketCap, you go to any of the regular crypto sites because the metadata is going to pull the different content of what you're talking about, and it's going to automatically link up against those AdWords and give you a whole bunch of ICO content. And just like people that were having YouTube videos that had all their metadata that said anything to do with all of our mining videos always started with a damn BitConnect ad. It drove me nuts. Craig Grant and all those dudes, man. I didn't want that shit on my YouTube page. I had no way to control it. They want to go and just do a overview of wiping it out. That's fine, because what happens is the technology bubbles up, and as it starts to complete some activity, right? You're gonna have Google approving ads for functional technology because it's going to classify it a little differently. So it's not hurting anybody that has good projects or fundamentally new things for you to be able to buy and show that I have a product, I have a service. It is open, it is distributed, but it's not shrouded in, you know, an ICO thing. So that's my take on it from the ad ban. I think that's overall a good thing. I will take some of your guys' questions here. We're going to do a stream right after this one. I'm going to go this one for about an hour. So we got about 35 more minutes. I'm going to get through the rest of this, and then we're going to take this stream over to Twitch, and then it's going to be a lot more casual. It's not going to be me I'm going to be reading your guys' comments. I'll answer questions. I'll answer rig questions. We'll do some unboxing. I actually had the very first company ever send me 3 pieces of equipment, and we'll open that up and talk through it. And you know, we can just in case if you guys are trying to get you know, my attention on something, we'll have that stream, and I'll tell you all that information here in the next half hour. So let's go. That gets us through that, and then the last piece of sell pressure, which is probably one of the biggest impacts right now. Thanks, Corey, for that 10 spot there, buddy. Is the Mt. Gox sell pressure. Now, I don't have any direct information to say that that's a factual and a true statement. I'm taking secondhand produced knowledge that people are putting out there from analytics and individual accounts and reports that are putting out there that a trustee for Mt. Gox has been since December liquidating a large amount of cryptocurrency, right? A large amount of Bitcoin in general, and has been one of the catalysts for the suppression of the market. But there's a lot more things that are going on than just one guy selling a lot of Bitcoin. And yes, you could technically tank the market if you're an old school holder. You have 6, 10, 12,000 Bitcoin. If you look at any of the available open buy orders on any of the exchanges at any given time, they're 2,000, 3,000 Bitcoin. If you're sitting on 10,000 bags, you could send to 4 different exchanges and dump the entire market overnight. Now, that would be absolutely ridiculous, and you'd be totally screwing yourself out of a lot of money if you wanted to drive the price all the way down and get $2,000 for your Bitcoin. And that's part of the what's holding the price up still is that there are an absolute ton of holders, and there's a lot of people on the fence that the narrative from December hasn't changed from a wanting to buy, right? Everybody that I'm around, and maybe my viewpoint's skewed because I have a lot of different interest in mining rigs, and I run a YouTube channel and a platform that talks about it, but the secondary and tertiary folks, meaning I walk into a Starbucks and I may have a BBT logo, and there's still people interested in Bitcoin. Oh man, I heard the prices went down. Is this a good time to buy? That's the number one question I get. Hey, I see the prices back down. Is this a good time to buy? They're not asking me about regulation. They're not asking me about Aggle. That's the new word for Google. Google's ads. Google's ad ban, they're not asking me about any of that stuff. They're asking me that, hey, it was really expensive at $20,000. Is this a good price? I challenge everybody. There's 336 people in here right now. I challenge all you guys to go out there. Just look at the ecosystem. Bring up it in conversation about Bitcoin. Like, oh man, how about that Bitcoin price? And see what the narrative is that around random folks that when you talk about it. And I bet you anything that they're going to, especially, I don't want to say the older folks, but I'm going to say younger folks are going to be like, man, this might be the time to get in. You know, what's your feeling on it, right? Because people understand digitally. They understand enough of it from the system because, mind you, that run up from October through December was like, woohoo, right? You had everything on CNBC. You had everybody giving you value propositions of why. None of those value propositions have changed. None of them. All they're saying is that there's some ad pressure, and there's some regulation coming down on ICOs and people that are trying to defraud you. Not challenging the fundamentals of what was been discussed over the last year. So that's what I'm talking about, is that none of those major, because at the end of the day, Bitcoin has always been and will continue to be the honey badger. It don't care, right? Fees, ads, whatever, it's a limited supply. It's been running for 9 years through all the bullshit, and it don't care. And if you want it right now, you can go out there and get it right now, right? For the price that it is right now. You could hold off and see if it goes to 5K and buy it. It doesn't matter, right? If you're day trading on all that, then yes, you're going to want to pay attention to price, and you're going to be watching charts, and you're going to be listening to TAs, and you're trying to get a competitive advantage on the buys and sells. Got it. But if you understand the technology, you understand that it's limited, and you look at it from a reserve currency side, and you look at a lot of the other currencies that are trying to facilitate the cash and the frequency and the speed, it's a great play, right? So the fundamentals are still there. Nothing's changed on them. Nothing's changed on them even from a regulatory standpoint. It's all about, do you interact or do you not interact with a place that wants your KYC information? And quite frankly, guys, and I understand the libertarian side with it. I totally respect and understand it. I root for the rebel sides in movies, right? However, when you come away from that shroud and you live in a day-to-day society where you have to have a bank account, you have to pay your taxes, you have to do these things to keep your freedoms, you got to figure out how to interact with that and then apply pressure if you're like, hey, you know what? Bullshit. I'm not going to do that. And then you go to your Congress or you go to whoever and you get a collection of people together and you go, you know what? That's some bullshit. We don't want that, right? So that's what I'm talking about. Is like if something is too overstretching or too overbearing, they're going to feel the pressure from it, right? So there's a lot of pressure, you know, and I'm not going to get into guns and stuff like that. We're going to stay out of that subject. But, I mean, there's movements. And right now, this isn't at that point of needing that level of a movement. But if you believe and you have times to purchase, I mean, prices are on discount right now. So let's move on real quick. So I'm going to try to keep this moving. We're going to pivot now. So that was kind of market turn down. None of the fundamentals changed. Let's move on to now things that have to do more with miners, and we're going to talk the new Bitmain announcement of the X3, which is an ASIC miner. It's a very specific miner. For the 336 people in here, if you're not into mining or anything like this, I'm going to give you a brief understanding explanation of this. But essentially, they're targeting an algorithm that was for GPU mining. So graphics cards, this kind of stuff over here that you probably see in the little guy over here. Here, let's go. Oh, that one's not there. I don't have the little ones set up for the big screen. But essentially, GPU mining rig. The ASIC is going to do it at a much more efficient power and hash rate and give you a better result, but at a very high cost. I think they're like $12,000, which is like insane crazy price. That's equivalent to two very nicely high-end rigs. And when I say very nice high-end rigs, I'm talking 1080 Ti rigs, a couple of those. For $12,000, that's like crazy talk, and it's devastating if you have if you've been mining with GPUs and that's your kind of currency of choice. That's where you've been pulling value out of, is to have ASICs come in there and kind of torpedo, you know, that piece. So you have Monero that came out and essentially put out a stance. They came out in February, probably on some rumors that there was going to be an ASIC coming out, and kind of set a tone to say, we don't know if they're true, but if you're going to do this, there's a high chance that we're going to fork the currency, which just means that they're going to change the underlying code, and then there's a consensus of miners that are out there. They're going to have to, mining pools mainly, that are going to have to flag for the update. So what's going to end up happening here is that in about 12 days, I think it's their current schedule, we'll publish it officially out on our website and out on Twitter, and maybe we'll talk to it on Twitch if I can get the actual official from Ricardo, which is the steward of Monero and the development team, the core development team that actually would be implementing the code. Again, nobody owns Monero. Nobody owns a lot of these cryptocurrencies that are running on CryptoNight, right? Algorithm. They are just stewards that, on behalf of the community, submit code, work with other people to create code, and then the community decides, yes, that's good. And then when you have the mining pools that all of us individuals, when you have individuals out here all mining, we all mine to a pool, and that pool sends it to the whole network of Monero. Now what's going to happen is when they go and make that, they publish that update, they're going to flag, all the miners will go at a certain block number, they'll flag for it. If you're an individual miner, essentially if you're on Supernova or you're on one of the pools that say, hey, we're going to support the new fork, you don't have to do anything. Essentially, they're going to update in the back end. And if you're running a local core client, you'll have to update that. of like you're running a local node. But if you're just running a mining computer and like, dude, I don't know what I'm doing, I just bought this thing and I have it plugged into a network, essentially, as long as the pool that you're supporting is flagging for it, and let's say this one flags, and then you have a whole bunch of other ones down here that are in a pool, right? So like, let's say that's Supernova pool, and then let's say this is like XMR pool, and then you have another one over here that's like, you know what? Screw you, dicks. We bought some of those X2s, and we're going to stay on the original. What'll happen is, and it's speculative, is that not all hard forks, when they go to hard fork this, it's essentially the chain is going something like this, and then it could split. It could split. If none of the ASICs are actually out there yet, and then all of the GPUs agree to go, all these different pools give their flag to say, yep, we support the fork, then all the hash power is going to go here, and then this one's going to die off. At least for Monero. It won't split. If a whole bunch of miners or one of these pools say, nope, we don't want to change, we don't like the update, it could fork. And this is a generality of most of all cryptocurrencies in general. Is if there's a hard fork, it doesn't mean that it's going to coin split. You know, coin split means it's going to you will duplicate essentially the coins that you have on a private wallet that you own. You own the keys to. So if you have, you know, a Monero Core wallet, you have, you know, a Jax wallet on some of the other currencies, you have essentially the private keys would have the coins in both sides, right? So we don't know officially if there's going to be support. They're not like having websites of who's going to support a fork, who's not going to support a fork. Essentially, probably the way this is going to go down, given the short timeline and given the uncoordination, is essentially the development team is going to put out an update, and they're going to say, hey, on this block, flag for it. And then we'll see if the mining pools are going to go and flag for it or not. And then if the one is not, this is where you need to be. If you're a miner, you need to be acutely aware where you're sending your hash power at. Right? So if you're sending your hash power and one of these pools are like, no, screw that, we're not going to flag for it, then you're going to want to move your hash power. If you want to support the original chain on Monero on the new algorithm, you're going to want to be on a pool that's going to flag for it. Or if you're a baller and you have like a whole facility, you just got to have your guy that's maintaining your facility make sure that he's flagging for the correct fork. And then you move your hash power over to that, and then when the hard fork happens, then all the hash power will go over there. And then Monero will no longer be on the standard crypto night. And I don't know officially what they're going to call it, if it's going to be Crypto Night V2 or what. They're going to give it a name officially, and then we'll get it out there and publish it to people. But that'll be the new currency. It'll still be mined through ASICs. And you're going to see stuff like Ravencoin, and they came out with a statement. Ravencore RVN uses the X16R algorithm. It's 16 separate algorithms that sit there and roll through different things. They have put out a public statement that to try to discourage any companies from making ASIC computers, saying, if you do it, we're just going to hard fork, so don't waste your time. And right now, to my understanding, Ravencoin is the only X16R. So, and the community that supports that is very behind the GPU mining. So unless there's like this growing conglomerate that nobody knows about that is like, nope, we want ASICs, and then there will go. Ultimately, what the worst case that'll happen is it'll just fork, right? And you'll have a copy of two, right? And then it comes down to which is going to provide more value, who's going to support it, and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the situation on the Monero response officially. It's been out there. Ricardo, let me bring it up. So you guys, if you guys haven't followed Ricardo, I'm doing you a solid. I'm getting you potentially more followers here, but if you're wanting to keep up the Spagini, let me switch over to this. So this is Ricardo. He is essentially the let's just say the head spokesperson and steward of Monero, and he has put out the tweets discussing, and getting banned from Bitmain's kind of meta, but right here, this was kind of I would call it the official response 17 hours ago where he pretty much came in. Oh, can you guys see that? Yeah. Hopefully you guys can see that. As came out and said that it won't work on there because they're going to fork it. So there's a few people in crypto that I would say follow just to kind of get situation awareness, and we'll that's where I kind of get mine, is kind of the de facto. It's like nobody owns Monero, but he's a steward of it, and I think it's a good. I think personally it's a good approach. I mean, I've always been very pro GPU mining, and the whole concept of GPU is to really distribute it. I want to have the common person, no matter who you are, no matter what country you're in, to be able to participate and hold up on these networks, and get compensated for that time. That's the allure of mining, is that you don't have to have a full rig, you don't have to have any of this. You could have and participate as an individual without anybody's permission. Like, you just connect to a network, you start providing hash power, you're now a part of that network, and for your time and your hash power, you're getting compensated in a token. That's the basis of mining in general. So, and there's a lot of other problems, like if any group or anything that need to be discussed, the GPU shortages, how much power they use, all that kind of stuff we need to have those creative discussions with people, with companies, to evolve the tech too, to make it to where we're not going to Micro Center and everything's out of stock and everybody hates us. So we need to figure out that, and I'm trying to help facilitate that conversation. I've reached out to a lot of different people. I go to the industry events. I try to talk to the engineers out there, and one of these days we'll get large enough that we'll get a say, or at least some kind of interactive discussion around that subject, because this stuff isn't going anywhere, and if anything, it's going to grow into other things where we're going to be doing other mining than just proof of work. So it's going to get into proof of effort. It's going to get into distributed computing, HPC stuff. That's where it's going to go. There's too much cheddar to be had, not just from a financial standpoint on the token side, but for indie developers to be able to use big global distributed computing models that only the big boys get to play with right now. There's no reason why somebody can't do computational fluid dynamics across all of our GPUs. That is going to come. People are going to build that tech. There's no doubt. So I see a question. I'll answer it real quick. Edward Heck, what happens to Monero that we are mining at this time? Nothing. You just keep mining it, and essentially the pool, once it switches the algorithm, as far as you're concerning, nothing changes, because you're still mining Kryptonite, just the new version of Kryptonite. What could happen, and we don't know the specifics of the algorithm, is that the hash could be, like, your output of your hash may become different. Meaning, like right now, if let's say you have a RX 580, it's optimized for Monero, you're getting 900 hashes. That's a pretty decent output from it. On the new algorithm, because of the way it's going to work, we don't know. We don't know what the changes are going to be, whatever they have to do to make it not compatible with the ASIC. Is that going to pivot all the miners are going to have to, like, we will make an assumption that the existing mining, all the miners are going to have to be updated. So when they go to release this fork, it may go only to CPU right away, and we'll have to use, the original CC miners or SG miners. Nobody knows yet. That's one of my kind of open questions that I haven't been able to ask Ricardo from the mining community. We will bring that to you guys as soon as possible. We'll make sure Vosk and everybody else understands it. Hopefully, if they find it out before us, one of the cryptocurrency mining channels out there will provide you guys at least a video version of that. More than likely, it'll probably hit it'll hit the net. There'll probably be a binary you can create for the new algorithm. So, and we don't know how post, you're sitting there mining here, you'll probably have to change at a minimum set of settings. So if you think about in your configuration and any of your miners, you'll have like dash, Kryptonite, you might have dash Kryptonite v2, right? And then that's going to trigger the new algorithm. It may have a different output response. So it's going to be interesting. I think it's actually an exciting thing, because if they have to choose an algorithm that's a little more memory intensive or something like that, it's going to pivot some things with it. It's going to keep it on the GPUs, but you might have, all you NVIDIA guys might have the new advantage, and the AMD might kind of get screwed on it. We don't know. I mean, RX Vegas right now are the prime candidate of digital mining solution with the $5. The RX Vegas are the prime candidate in use for Crypto Night right now. So if that algorithm is tweaked, is it going to impact their ability to hash at an exponential rate compared to other graphics cards? We don't know. Now that's a bad value proposition for GPU miners that have RX Vegas, but we don't know how big of the tweak is going to be. So we'll try to reach out to Ricardo. I would assume that they're also working with somebody that's in the mining community from a miner, configuration and change. If it's Cast XMR, any of those miners that are actually, and when I say miners like that, I'm talking about the actual software that does the mining that we use on our GPU rigs. If there's going to be a change, we don't know, and maybe this is already published, so we'll find out, and then we will get it out to you guys. I would just say stay tuned to our Twitch and our Twitter. I do a lot more Twitch lately than I've been doing on YouTube. YouTube I'm trying to keep very concise and make it episodic in nature, but we will get it out to you as soon as we can get it. And obviously we'll do a range of testing and stuff. We'll have probably a whole episode on it. Vegas for sale. I wouldn't sell. Guys, I mean, if you have some kind of crazy opportunity to sell your Vegas for some crazy amount, if you bought them for $600 and you're able to get $1,000 for them, and those people are happy about it, nobody's going to stop you from being an entrepreneur. However, I mean, it could be one of those things that now it's very memory hardened or it's very detailed to where the Vegas are a 2x better than they are now. Who knows with that algorithm? I would kind of hold fast if I were you personally and see what the actual output of that is, because they may become the next thing better than sliced bread. What is this? Do you think Black Eye mining XMR will for a while now? I don't know. We're going to find out if somebody's been mining it with an ASIC for a while. I would say when they're doing the burn-in and the testing and the chip design that they put some units, but mind you, when they're going to go and test, when they're going through a fabrication process, they're not building 1,000 of them and then testing them. They're building like 1 or 2 chips, maybe 10 chips at most, to have different materials, different processes, maybe some tweaks to version 1, version 2, version 3. It's a lot like software development, but just a lot more expensive, right? They stamp that chip, and then they may have like 4 or 5 of them mining, right? Then they may do a series and do a full test of them. That's when you'll see that ramp up before they ship, because they want to test them. They want to make sure they don't ship you a brick. From a quality control standpoint, they're going to put them on a network. Now, cryptocurrency is one of those very unique categories that normal in that process, you would do it on a test net. Like in any other world, you have development, integration, a pre-production environment, and a production environment. Pre-production in this world is like the ETH testnet, right? The Ethereum testnet, Raspbian or something, right? Then you have a integration, which would be a local instantiation, a local stack, a local environment where you have spun up a local closed network version of whatever currencies that you're wanting to mine. You have a server that's hosting, the blockchain explorer. You have a nodal type of setup, and you're just testing internally. Like, what's its output? But cryptocurrency is one of these unique things that once you get that, maybe in the first day, it is advantageous for you to put it on mainnet, right? Maybe do testnet for a day to make sure you're not creating some kind of weird noise or some kind of bad output or damage, or you're damaging your equipment. Then literally its cycle from development to production is pretty instant, because there's an immediate return for you to do that. There's an incentive. You have this incentive to put it into production. It's a very interesting way of looking at things. So if you see a bump in hash power, especially on a set of hash power that can retarget very quickly, like Bitcoin, you see a hash power come up, but difficulty kind of stays and it goes off in schedules, right? So you can get this advantage if you put a lot of hardware on. A lot of these other currencies pivot very quickly and will adjust difficulty and all that, so you don't get that huge advantage if you put a whole bunch of units on a mining network. So you would see this kind of ramp with the difficulty. What's up? Skynet. Oh yeah, we got 10 minutes ish. Yeah, well, so some of this, the difficulty analysis, we're going to get to all these, but I'm going to make this a hard stop at 1 hour just to keep the YouTube video very concise. And then we're going to take this over to Twitch. So if you don't have a Twitch, it's Bits Be Trippin'. It's twitch.tv/Bits Be Trippin'. And I'm sorry if 400 people don't have Twitch accounts. Hopefully you go and get one. If you have an Amazon Prime account, you probably got a free premium account. So you go out there, make a Twitch account, and then follow us on there because I want that to be a lot more interactive. And plus the quality is just higher on Twitch. I mean, YouTube's got some work to do on the codecs. Thank you for that $10 spot. And I see dude. I didn't see who did that.
That's all it is, the dude.
The dude. Awesome.
And Digital Mining gave you 5 earlier.
Digital Mining Solutions, like a boss. But that's hopefully answers that question for you guys. Let's see here. We'll talk difficulty analysis on because I want to bring up that's one that I'm going to spend more than 10 minutes on because we're going to go through each currency. I want to go through each currency. I want to see the curves, and then we can see where these things are at. And it helps you read and to understand. Of like, man, I was mining for like a week, and then now, man, I'm not getting shit. Why am I not getting shit? Now you can see like, oh, I can see the difficulty went up by like 2.5 times. What the hell, right? And see where it's hitting you in the pocketbook on that. And then we'll get into some price analysis there, and then the mining profit of how I calculate things, of figuring out like right now I'm mining Raven on some of the machines. The output was very good 4 weeks ago. It's not so much now, but it's still pretty decent. But am I mining to current relative price where it's 280 Satoshis in a suppressed market? Or what I'm mining right now, every 3 days or so, getting maybe 1,100, 1,200 coins, is that going to be 900 Satoshis in a year from now? You know, and so that time that I spent, you know, this relative time that I spent mining, you know, and I got 1,500 here, and then I got 750 here, and then I got 350 here. It was a descending curve of how much I had in my total output, you know. But you know, at 2,250, and then I had another 30 or 2,600, right, total. And it was at 300 Satoshis here, so it looked good, and it went down to 250 Satoshis here, but here it was like 900 Satoshis, you know. This time that I mined here ended up being really worth it. And that's kind of the value proposition of mining when it's low, if you believe in the long-term output. Answer a few questions on here before we wrap up, because all these others are like full segments. I mean, hopefully this is good information for you guys. Hopefully, I mean, I haven't beat a dead horse on understanding the perspectives. You guys can provide me some feedback in here, and I can see it. And also put it on down below in the comments. I mean, there's some deplorable data. Don't calculate. Laugh when you're a millionaire in 3 years from now. I got over 10,000 RVN now. I wish I got some sooner. It's just about mining, man. It's a math problem. It literally is just like this long-term math problem. And as more people come into the space, and they become counterparties that purchase it and drive price up, we all did. Awesome. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I'm not getting a lot of questions here. Come over to Twitch. See us on Twitch. We're going to keep this going. We're going to get a little more detailed. We'll have the mini cam going. I'm going to do some opening up, and we got 373 people here. We might even actually do a couple more. I have a few more things that I have put off to the side to do some giveaways. I know it's kind of like cheap way to bring you guys over, but I literally have stuff that we've cleaned up in this place, and it's either, I'm not going to put it on eBay or anything. I'd rather, you know, interact with you guys and give you guys an opportunity to win stuff. There's stuff from the studio that we've been cleaning up and stuff. So, and it's mining related. So if you guys want to join us over there at Twitch TV, we'll do that on a shameless plug for that. And we'll carry it on over there. All right, guys, we're going to end this one here. Thanks for tuning in for this one. Hopefully it was valuable for you guys. We went a full hour.
Follow us over.
And follow us over. Ending this one as soon as I